Hello everybody, it's me Ghost Critic. It's time for a Sunday comic book review video. Thank you for joining me here on my channel. And I may not have had many books this week. There was 5 on my pull list. I was certainly getting my 5-day portion of fruit because everything was completely bananas. There was twists and turns, there was a lot of confusion, and I may have been a little naive on one of the books. And I'll be asking you to help me out on that and make myself look foolish, but we'll get to that very soon. But we're going to kick off this week, and this week, for those of you who watch me a lot, you know I kind of put them in ascending order of how good they were. Now, to be honest, of the 5 books, there wasn't anything truly bad. So although there is a kind of progression, the first book I'm going to show was by no means not very good. But of the 5 books I picked, well, there's a reason for it. We're going to kick off with the I Hate Fairyland special edition, which for a lot of you will probably have looked very familiar because this was, in essence, the free comic book day issue that obviously came out for free, but it's got some extra pages at the end, some new content, plus for whatever reason, the whole script for this particular issue. Now, I say there's extra content in this because you have what was essentially the free comic book day comic, which kind of poked fun at all things Image through the eyes of Scotty Young and his main character from I Hate Fairyland, Gertrude, as she traverses the land of Image, and we drop in on characters from Image titles like Bitch Planet, Invincible, Savage Dragon. There's some Spawn in there, there's some Walking Dead. All the big Image greats are in there. But of course, Scotty Young couldn't fit everything in there, and that's where this added extra content comes in, which to me kind of, I mean, I Hate Fairyland, it's always been about kind of one joke told over and over and over again, and it's hilarious. In this instance, and giving the price point on this book, I felt a bit cheated because basically it's Scotty Young picking up the phone to all the Image comic book creators that weren't included in the original free comic book day, and the joke kind of wears thin after a while. It's still hilarious, it's still fun, it's still that over the top I Hate Fairyland Scotty Young goodness that you get every month from the regular series. But I think it's a little bit of a cheek for them to put this out at a $5.99 tag when 60%, 70% of this book you could have got for free many months ago. So, although I enjoyed it, I just felt a little bit cheated on the whole price point. But it's nice to have, and it keeps my collection without a gap in it, because that's what us crazy comic book collectors do. We can't have gaps. Moving on, it's the return of Brian K. Vaughan and Cliff Chang's Paper Girls. This is issue 16, and we've kind of had a little bit of a hiatus, a couple of months, I think it is, at least. But we ended in the last story arc where they went in the kind of time machine and were meant to be blasted to the far-flung future. But the girls kind of get separated. Poor Tiff has reached what is pretty much the year 2000. With the whole Y2K bug that never really happened. The girls go back to where they were originally in the present, sort of. But the confusing thing about this is where Tiff is. We've had the characters going to their future, which is our present. We've had them go right back in time to kind of like prehistoric times. But Tiff seems to have gone to a time that may be overlapping with another time, or maybe she's in a kind of alternative universe. So it's a little bit confusing where Brian K. Vaughan is taking this, as we see Tiff in the town that she grew up in the year 2000, being accosted by a police officer while there are these giant robots fighting over the town. But she seems to be the only one that can see it, which is very confusing. Why can the cop not see it? We have a little touch of, again, the far-flung future, where I guess all these scientists, these doctors, are coming from and going back to the past, and it is all connected with our 4 paper girls, but it feels as though they might want to get rid of the girls. The girls are causing too much havoc in kind of past timelines, and basically screwing things up by the looks of it. But that's the whole thing. It's getting very confusing, right to the point where the 3 girls that are still in the mall go and visit some woman who is kind of like knows a lot more than, not necessarily that she's letting on, but she has been following the path of our paper girls for a while, and we see the big board with the newspaper articles and maps and all stuff, and she knows that they are time travelers. But who is this woman? What is her connection to everything else that is going on? So I got to the end of this issue a little bit stumped. But I am sure Brian K. Vaughan has it all mapped out. It's all planned. He's always been, you know, the solid, great storyteller from previous titles he's created and told the story of. So I'm not worried. I'm just going to stay in this state of confusion probably for a couple more issues until it's all kind of explained. But Paper Girls is always a welcome sight to see on my pull list, and is a fun kind of sci-fi time travelling book that, you know, if you're into that kind of stuff, please do pick it out. Moving on to the new #1 that I picked up last week, and it was Punisher. The Platoon return for Garth Ennis to Frank Castle. He's written many of these tales of the Punisher in the past. They've always been top-notch stuff. And we've got Goran Parlov doing the art on this. The last time I was, probably the first time I was introduced to his work was his image titled Starlight, about the kind of Flash Gordon-esque type character, and the artwork in there was fantastic. Obviously it's very different. This isn't a sci-fi story like Starlight was. This is set in the kind of first tour that Punisher did, and it's kind of set in a flashback kind of way. And I always kind of get a little bit annoyed with these kind of stories, because we seem to be told stories and scenarios and scenes that how did these guys even get to see, as we see these kind of 4 or 5 old guys around a table in a bar recanting to what we presume is a reporter their first tour and outing with Frank Castle in charge. And we get to meet all the younger versions of these old guys. We get to be introduced to their characters and how Frank Castle bounces off them, how he deals with being kind of like the new guy even though he's in charge. And then there's this scene which is kind of seen from the other side, the kind of the people who live in is it Vietnam? I think it's Vietnam. And you at that point you're like, how are we getting told this? How did any of these four guys that are recanting this story, how would they be privy to this scene? And I was a little bit annoyed because it kind of broke that kind of flashback scenario. And it's not until right at the very end of this issue that you get kind of almost slapped in the face. It's like, wake up. This part of the story is being told by the reporter. And you have to now ask yourself, who is the reporter? Because basically they are the enemy. They're the ones that were fighting on the other side of the whole rice fields and wanted to take down the Americans. Garth Ennis just totally took me by surprise with this, and I love that little twist, and I can't wait now to read the next issue of Punisher Platoon. I'm not always a big fan of the kind of army stories that involve Punisher. I like them and I'll read them, but I prefer to see him in, you know, his modern present day setting as the Punisher. But I understand and I appreciate the richness of Frank Castle's history and the creators who bring these stories to life and just add yet another layer to the Frank Castle Punisher mythos. So great stuff, and of course Parlov's artwork, a little bit toned down than what I'm used to. Obviously it's very difficult for me to compare with the whole sci-fi epic that he did with Starlight, but you can clearly see this is Parlov's work, and it's not shabby in the slightest. Moving steadily along with our penultimate issue, just missing out on my pick of the week. It's issue 4 of Charles Soule's Astonishing X-Men, and I've been very, very excited with this maxi series, which has Charles Soule writing the story from start to finish, but a different artist being on each issue. And usually that it does kind of annoy a lot of us collectors, but for some reason it works here. I don't know whether it's because the artists that have preceded it so far, the ones that have come after each other, haven't been that dissimilar. They've certainly, I'm not saying that their artwork is very, very similar, as in you couldn't really tell them apart, because you can, but they are kind of sticking to the big bright colours, the characters as we know and love them. And it's in this issue, we had the last issue of the whole Wolverine and him being tortured by his past and everything that he's had to go through. Now we look in on the other characters who, while they're in what's his name? Oh goodness. The Shadow King, that's it. The Shadow King. While they're in his kind of astrally plane type environment, they are basically given their wildest dreams in a way to ensnare them and capture them and allow him, the Shadow King, to take over them and then come into our world and take down all the telepaths that belong in our universe, in our Marvel universe. So it's up to Professor Xavier, who in this issue kind of tells us that, you know, he may still be dead. It was quite a surprise to see him there. This is probably one of those things where his consciousness is still floating around somewhere, waiting to be, you know, transplanted into a body so he can be alive again. But I'm not too worried about that kind of stuff at the moment, because his X-Men and strange and crazy things like that have happened time and time again in the X-Men history, but he's basically fighting for the X-Men and kind of pulling some strings in the background to try and pull them out of these wild, exciting dreams. So we have Mystique and Phantom X, who are really living Mystique's dream of knowing that, or believing that there is no way they're going to beat the Shadow King. So she wants to have the best time. So she's got practically the best champagne. She lives in this wonderful apartment, and the Phantom X keeps reminding her, you know this isn't real, don't you? It's Shadow King's illusions. We've got to break out of this. And then on the other side we have Gambit and Rogue, and for all those people who know the history of those two characters, their kind of on and off love relationship, this is their dream where the both of them can be together, where Rogue can touch Gambit without having without sucking his life out of him. And while they know that they shouldn't do this, because again they know this is the Shadow King's illusion, it's him trying to force them to believe it 100% so he can take them over and have another kind of army member, for want of a better phrase, to help him take down all the telepaths. You get this sudden switch where Phantom X and Mystique and Rogue suddenly appear in front of Charles Xavier, and he's there, and it's like, right, stop before you ask. I am the real Xavier. I'm not a Shadow King ploy. I'm going to help you get out of this. You've got to believe me. And everyone suddenly goes, well, where's Gambit? But Gambit loves Rogue so much and wants this to happen, despite the fact that Rogue does too, but she knows it can never be. Gambit takes the bait, and we see at the end Gambit has been taken over by the Shadow King. So he now has Wolverine and Gambit. While all this is going on, Wolverine is trying to take down everyone in the building that they are currently residing in, as everyone is in the astral plane, trying to take down the army and basically kill anyone. So it's up to Bishop, Angel, and hopefully Psylocke to take Wolverine down so he doesn't unintentionally kill anybody. It's all exciting stuff, and I really love this, and I'm just so happy to see Charles Soule have a nice long 12-issue storyline. I'm presuming it's going to be 12 issues long for this, and just to really create this great story, and I'm just enjoying it all. The artwork this time by Carlos Pacheco. I'm very familiar with his artwork. He's done XMen titles many times, so he really knows how to draw these characters. Just love it. Really a great package. Now we come to my pick of the week, which may seem odd because, and this goes back to the start of the video where I feel a little bit naive perhaps. I'm certainly confused, and it's all to do with bananas. My pick of the week was David Lapham's Stray Bullets, Sunshine and Roses, issue 28. And we're back with Orson and Beth. Particularly Orson. We've seen over this 28 issue run this kind of small town boy who is basically fallen in love with the wrong person, and we see him basically spiraling into a world of violence, guns, drugs, alcohol, but he seems to like it. But is it getting too much for him? As he seems to only be able to in control when he has his disguise on now. I'm just trying to find, yes, it's Derek. From, if you can just see from the first page, the top panel is him as Orson. Then he puts on the moustache and the 70s shades, and he becomes this Derek. And Derek can basically do anything. He has the confidence, the drive that Orson does not have. And then there's all this about the bananas. I don't know what it means. I'm totally lost, but every time he eats a banana, or whatever this is, everyone around him just throws up. It's the most disgusting thing they've ever seen. And right at the very end, when he's asking for another banana, you've got Beth in the car chasing off saying, it's not a banana. Will someone please tell me what actually is it? It's obviously something disgusting and vile that makes all these people throw up. Once you tell me, I'm sure this will become even darker than it currently is, because although it's very kind of almost farcical and over the top, and to the point where it's getting stupid, there is this layer underneath that Lapham does so well. It reminds me a little bit of kind of David Lynch films, who always had this kind of wonderful American lifestyle, that, you know, the white picket fence, but underneath it there's this undercurrent of kind of violence and evil and darkness, and this is very much the same thing, where all these characters want to have kind of like the American dream life. They want the money, they want the possessions, the material goods, and to live a great life. But the way they go about it is the most horrendous way to do it. But David Lapham is just doing such a great job on this book. The story, no matter where it goes, it always feeds back into the main plot line, and I'm just amazed at what a great job he's doing. I don't believe Stray Bullets has ever missed a month. It's continual. He does this all by himself. Okay, it's black and white, but still, all these characters have their own personality. They don't look like a carbon copy of someone else within the series. They all have their own kind of facial expressions, and David Lapham just knocks it out of the park. It's a superb series. I'm sure there are plenty of trades of this to catch up on. If you like your humour with a heavy serving of darkness and a big dollop of farce, then this will be the book for you. Always look forward to reading it, and you should too. Please support this book. And that's it for this week. 5 books, 5 crazy rides, and I love them all. But it's come to an end now. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Give me a big thumbs up. And if you're new and you don't want to miss any more videos, please hit the subscribe button. I have another haul video for you coming up in the next couple of days. A nice stack of comic books I just recently picked up, so look out for that. Until Wednesday, when I'll have a new stack of books to show off, I will see you then. Enjoy your comic book reading. Bye bye.